Hello and welcome back to the Arcane Forge. My name's Josh. More importantly, welcome back to another Monster Monday, a series where I draw a creature from D&D, or in this case, not actually from D&D, and I talk about its lore and its mythology and what it's like to fight in-game as well. Because there are so many monsters, way too many for me to pick from, especially when I get so excited about each one, I like to use your suggestions for monsters that you would like to see. So if there is a monster that you'd really like to see me draw, make sure to leave that down below in the comments section so that I can get round to it and so that my patrons can vote on which ones of your ideas they like the most. Now today's suggestion was the Bandersnatch, something that's not actually in D&D yet, or at least not until I homebrewed it in, which is something else that I like to do. If there's a creature from mythology or a particular book series or something like that that seems like it would be perfect for D&D but isn't actually in the game yet, I like to homebrew these and give them to you for free, which is what I've done today. And today's suggestion was first made by Yorick Beast, actually in our Discord, which I'll leave a link to down below in the description box because the Discord channel is really active, lovely and welcoming. So if you'd like to join in, add your suggestions there or just get chatting with other members of the community, you can find the Discord, which is open to absolutely everyone down below in my description box as well. But in the meantime, let's get started talking about the Bandersnatch and how it fits into D&D. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy troves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the boargroves, and the mumraths outgrabe. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the Jubjub bird, and shun the frumious Bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the manxome foe he sought. So rested he by the tumtum tree, and stood a while and thought. And as the uffish thought he stood, the Jabberwock, with eyes of flame, came whiffling through the tugly wood, and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through the vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. O frabjous day, calloo calais, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the boargroves, and the mumraths outgrabe. It's hard to research anything Bandersnatch related without your results turning up about 80,000 pieces of information about the Black Mirror episode of the same name. For those who didn't know, Charlie Brooker, a really brilliant writer and one of the chief minds behind Black Mirror, a TV series, and in my opinion one of the best TV series in existence, made a now very famous interactive and sprawling game-like episode of Black Mirror entitled The Bandersnatch, which aimed to explore the idea of meta-media, free will, fate, and much more in a highly non-linear, choose-your-own-adventure style narrative. It's an absolutely magical and extremely depressing look into humanity, as Black Mirror tends to be, and while the name of the episode is open to interpretation, as all episodes are, my opinion is that the story, which follows a descent into madness peering behind the curtain of reality and the surrealness of our society, mimics the somewhat ludicrous and nonsensical nature of the Bandersnatch's actual origins. If you're new to even the word Bandersnatch, it's a creature first fathomed by Lewis Carroll, the very peculiar writer behind the Alice in Wonderland stories and all accompanying works. It made its debut appearance in the 1871 novel Through the Looking Glass, and again in The Hunting of the Snark 3 years later. A passage from the former is what I read at the beginning of this video. The Bandersnatch is never concretely described in either story, leaving it mostly to the reader's interpretation and the atmosphere conjured in Carroll's intentionally nonsensical and surreal writing to piece together what this creature might be. What little we do know about this creature are, first and foremost, that it's incredibly fast, that it has a long neck and snapping jaws, and that's pretty much it actually. Many artists and filmmakers have tried to approximate their own versions of this beast. The most famous of these is likely Peter Newell's illustration in the early 1900s, which featured the Bandersnatch and the Jubjub bird, another one of Lewis Carroll's surreal creations. And in this illustration, the Bandersnatch looks like a far more jovial, sort of cheeky, lion-like monster with 4 human-ape-like hands instead of feet, and very human-like eyes. Atop its head is a set of gazelle-like horns. It's fair to say that as an artist, I have almost free reign with my design when it comes to this one, which you know I will absolutely love. You will never ever find a happier artist than one who is told that they can do absolutely anything they want without restrictions or external ideas. So these creatures are an absolute creativity fountain. That said, while their initial description, as heard at the beginning of this video, was incredibly vague, it was later expanded upon not by Carroll himself, but by perhaps a lesser-known Pennsylvanian intellectual and fantasy author, Anna Matlack Richards, in her 1895 novel entitled A New Alice in an Old Wonderland. In this story, an American girl, who is also named Alice, bearing no relation to the original Alice who visited Wonderland in Carroll's original series, encounters many of the characters of Wonderland in previous stories. In this story, for example in a poem called Bandersnatchy, a new hero sets out to slay the Bandersnatch rather than quivering in fear of it, and Matlack Richards tells us that it's necessary to be armed with a vorpal sword or something called a Winksy pistol, both of which are famously introduced in these same stories and poems. The vorpal sword later became a favourite of D&D players, as it was introduced into many Dungeon Master's guides, and in our current edition is a +3 weapon, which when one critically hits with it, automatically decapitates a creature, which should kill it, but if it doesn't, it deals an additional, I think it's 68 damage. So it's an absolutely brilliantly filthy weapon. And we're told to use these particular weapons which are certain to kill something because, quote, one can never tell what a Bandersnatch might do. Further to this, the new hero describes the Bandersnatch in greater detail, including that it is, quote, extremely long-legged, with a long tail, and the ability to fly, end quote. We are also told that the Bandersnatch has the ability to camouflage itself as a tree and hide from nearby threats until the time is right to attack. So how does all of this translate to D&D? Well, it's difficult to tell. While they've never actually, to my knowledge at least, officially been a part of D&D, aside from perhaps inspiring the creation of creatures like the Bander Hob, perhaps, which looks and acts very, very differently to what we know of the Bandersnatch, despite having a similar enough name. These creatures have appeared in D&D's sister tabletop game, Pathfinder. And Pathfinder is actually host to a whole legion of different breeds of Bandersnatch, ranging from the familiar Frumious Bandersnatch to the Magicbane Bandersnatch, and several other variations in between. This multitude of creatures all exhibit similar traits, some inspired by Lewis Carroll's stories, and some purely for player intrigue and value in combat. All of these creatures are of the Fae, something that I will definitely include in my own homebrew interpretations of this creature, because in my opinion at least, Wonderland as a location couldn't more clearly be inspiration for the Feywild and its peculiar denizens, with its chaotic rules. So while at the time of making this video, there is no official D&D Bandersnatch, maybe that will change in future supplements that include more Fey creatures or perhaps monstrosities. I will endeavour to make a homebrew version of this monster that you guys can use for free in your campaigns. I'll leave a link to that down below in my description box because it'll be up on D&D Beyond and on my website, and fundamentally, I'm going to make this creature a Fey. In Pathfinder, they include this creature's ferocious predatory attitude and its speed, another common theme that needs to be included in our version, but this creature is given a feline appearance with 6 limbs, not unlike a Displacer Beast from D&D. And while I love the art included, given the full breadth of interesting stuff that I can come up with when given free rein, I think we can do something a little bit more original than just another variation of a Displacer Beast. But I suppose this creature could also just simply be like a dire Displacer Beast if you wanted to use something like that. But using what we know of the Bandersnatch from its origins, what can we bring to this creature to make a fun challenge in combat and a unique creature that has its own place in the Feywilds? Now, I sent some ideas over to my Discord server. By the way, if you're looking for a very, very fun and active community talking about art and D&D and just about everything else, there should be a link in my description box to my Discord server, which is open to everybody, so come and join us and say hi. I'm on there quite a lot, but the community are very, very lovely and very active, so feel free to join in. Anyway, I came up with my homebrew version of this creature and sent it over to my pals over on Discord who had some notes and things. But here's what I came up with. Hello. Now, I'm very sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to say a massive thank you to my patrons over on Patreon, and I hope you can join me in that as well. I'll take up as little time as I possibly can while I do this, so that I don't interrupt your enjoyment of the video. But it's important to note that without my patrons, this content, the Arcane Forge, the video you're watching, would not exist. So I hope you'll join me in saying a massive, massive thank you to all of them who have supported me this month, but in particular, those who have gone above and beyond to the Silver Archfey and above, who this month are Nicholas G. Silver, Benjamin Colburn, Jonathan Foster, George Punton, Yorick Beese, Nap in Camo, Duck Quack, The Smiling Sadist, Skyrush Soul, Amanda and Jake Westfall, Ethan Dibby, Nathan Stratton, Bartle Gruff the Great, Goblin, Braxton Hudson, Halfie Wolf, Xavier Heatherwick, Peter Balfe, Max Schluter, Tim Klima, Darth Caetana, Oliver Thorvald Mellock, Colby Monroe, Styrax, Ryan H., Max Copeland, Steve Harrison, Tamerling, Trevor Traub, Brandon Kerr, Dan Waterman, Dominique Jolly, Sam Hickson, AJ, It's Just Avi, Christian Palmer Smith, Aldrin, C, just the letter C, and anyone else who would like to join us this month. If you'd like to be a part of our community, I'll leave a link down below in my description box where you can find us and get rewards like commissions, copies of my illustrations, one-on-one live chats, additional exclusive Patreon videos, and thank yous and shoutouts just like this. So thank you so much for helping me thank those guys, and I'll let you get back to your video. Thank you so much. There was some discrepancy in the Discord server about the challenge rating of this creature. I initially had it at a challenge rating 6, but the more I researched the Bandersnatch, the more terrifying and powerful it became. Following your advice, I ended up setting this at a challenge rating 8. It probably is a bit more damaging than that, but its stats are relatively low, I suppose, for that challenge rating. I'm hoping it made an interesting balance, and an interesting thing to use in combat for a specific purpose. Let me elaborate. So I gave it a 16 armor class. We are told that this thing can quite accurately imitate a tree, that it's incredibly quick and very, very hard to hit. So I thought making it very nimble and speedy, and perhaps even if you do hit it, is going to have these sort of like tough scales or feathers or sort of bark-like plates. So organic armor, or an organic dodge reflex, I guess, granting this thing an armor class of 16 seemed pretty fitting. I gave it fairly standard health for a creature at challenge rating 8, so it has 13 d10 plus 39, which averages out at 110, I believe. I'm terrible at maths, so that's probably what that is, but again, if you're using this creature and that doesn't seem to write to you, then that's the nature of homebrew. You can always change things. Speed is the name of the game when it comes to the Bandersnatch. There are lots of different versions, there are lots of different stories, but the only consistent thing that is mentioned over and over and over again is how blindingly fast the Bandersnatch is. So, looking at other Fey creatures that are incredibly quick, namely the Quicklings, I decided to give this thing 120-foot movement speed, at least on the ground. I gave it the ability to fly as well, because there are stories which indicate that this thing can fly, but I didn't want its flight to be the same speed. I don't want this to be an aerial creature. I want it to use its flight for a very specific purpose. I want it to be able to dodge out of the way of traps, follow a party, and fundamentally have an option where it would stop leaving tracks in the ground if a hunter is trying to track this creature. So I gave it 60-foot flying speed, which is still absolutely great, half the speed of its natural blinding running speed, but good for very particular uses. I gave it 2 specific rules related to its speed as well. One called Galumphing Speed, which says the Bandersnatch's speed is almost unmatchable, granting it advantage on initiative rolls, and it can use the hide, disengage, or dash moves as a bonus action. Now you have my Discord to thank here, because initially I had taken verbatim from Quicklings that this thing would move so blindingly quickly that you'd have disadvantage to hit it. But I was reminded, specifically by Colby, one of my moderators, that Quicklings are designed to be annoying. They are designed to infuriate players. And the Bandersnatch, not so much. It's something to be hunted, it's something to be feared, it's a lone predator, and there are enough challenges to defeating this creature as time goes on. So manifesting its speed in a different way seemed appropriate. Namely, it has another rule called Frabjous Evasion, stating that if the Bandersnatch is subjected to an effect that allows it to make a dexterity saving throw to take only half damage, like a fireball, it instead takes no damage, and if it fails on the saving throw, it only takes half instead. Further to this, I thought a particularly interesting use of this creature would be for a very specific kind of combat. I really like it when creatures have a defined use, when there are an interesting set of tactics, and when someone has thought up a whole scenario in their head before creating a creature, not just, making stats for something that you can use in any way. Perhaps that's me over-gamifying it. As a DM, I think it helps to have some kind of direction and an idea of how a creature can be best utilized in combat, what its preferred hunting tactics might be. And to that end, I gave it a move called the Uffish Pounce, or the Uffish Pounce, stating that if the Bandersnatch moves at least 15 feet straight forward towards a creature and then hits it with a claw attack, something which it's going to do very, very easily, that target needs to succeed on a strength saving throw or be knocked prone. And if the target is already prone, the Bandersnatch can make one bite attack as a bonus action. Speaking of its attacks, I gave it a multi-attack, and it has a couple of options. I said that it can either make one bite attack and 2 claw attacks. Its bite attack does 2d6 plus 4 piercing damage, with the chance to knock someone prone, and its claws do 1d6 plus 4. So it can either do 1 bite and 2 claws, or it can do 1 bite and 1 tail whip attack. One of the things that we're told about this creature is that it has a very, very long tail, and I can't honestly remember if this was a Pathfinder adaptation or if this is simply, a tail attack needs to be different. There needs to be a reason to use a tail attack separately, so I decided to give it a poisoning ability. So it does 1d6 plus 4 damage just like the claw, but requires creatures to make a Constitution saving throw with the chance to become poisoned until the start of the Bandersnatch's next turn. The poison condition inflicting disadvantage on people with certain skill checks and saving throws. So I feel like this is a great way to kind of open an attack. Maybe you bite and then tail whip, so someone has disadvantage. You flee the scene, you use your bonus action to disengage from someone and run away at your massive speed. And then you come back using your Uffish Pounce. Now they have disadvantage to resist being knocked prone, and you get to make a huge amount of damage the second turn around. I liked the idea that this creature can disguise itself as a tree, that it's in some way intelligent and it waits for the right moment to pounce, to strike. So I gave it the ability to enact what's called Manxome Camouflage, saying that the Bandersnatch has advantage on dexterity stealth checks made to hide in a forest sort of terrain. While it remains motionless in a forest area, it is indistinguishable from the Tum-Tum tree, the tree mentioned in its first appearance. Aside from simply escaping combat or waiting for the right moment to pounce and kind of use a sneak attack like feature, I decided to literally give it sneak attack. So it has sneaky snicker snack, like the vorpal sword, saying that if the Bandersnatch attacks from stealth or has advantage on its attacks, its opening attack, only one, deals an extra 2d6 damage. So most of you should already be seeing kind of some of the great uses of this creature in combat, that it is a creature that waits and lurks in a forest and then picks people off one by one with this huge Uffish Pounce, which can knock people over, gets a bonus action to damage someone with a bite, does all this extra damage, and then it can bonus action disengage to flee the scene, gradually whittling people down little by little until they use all their healing spells, until they use all their potions, and then they are vulnerable. It can follow them no matter what. It's never too far away with its 120-foot movement speed, but I didn't say it was necessarily particularly quiet during that time, so it has this flying ability so that it can leave no tracks, it can avoid traps, it can float through the trees where people are less likely to look for it and stalk its prey. Now the big thing about this creature is that we are told that only a vorpal sword or a Winxie pistol, which has yet to be a part of D&D. The vorpal sword's in, Winxie pistol not so much. My patrons very, very thankfully unlocked Magic Item Workshop video, so maybe that'll be the first Magic Item Workshop that we kind of homebrew some stats for a Winxie pistol. But we're told that those are the only things that can kill it. And I wanted to kind of think of why that might be. So I gave it resistance to all forms of damage that are non-magical, so that's bludgeoning, piercing, slashing, and so on. And a bit like a vampire, I gave it regeneration. So I said Frumious Regeneration. In this rule, it says that the Bandersnatch regains 10 HP at the start of its turn. If the Bandersnatch takes damage from a vorpal weapon or a Winxie pistol, this trait doesn't function until the start of the Bandersnatch's next turn. And that the Bandersnatch dies only if it starts its turn with 0 HP and doesn't regenerate. So you really need to be wielding a Winxie pistol or a vorpal weapon of some kind in order to even kill this creature. But then I figured that legends of this connectedness between vorpal weapons and the Bandersnatch would very much need to be, if they aren't already, sort of meta-knowledge that all players even would know about. So the stats worked relatively well, at least in my opinion. Let me know if you use this creature in your game. But from what little information we have, a few lines in a poem here and there, a little bit of a story written a few decades after the initial release of this creature, and now some stats, I thought we could kind of tie some things together and come up with some lore and some information about how this creature might exist in your D&D campaign world. So to that end, I said the following. I said that the Bandersnatch is a curious creature and a vicious predator who stalks the dark forests of the Feywild, using its blistering speed, stealthy hunting tactics, and almost sapient intelligence to hunt lost explorers in the shadow-shrouded woodlands they call home. There's something altogether uncomfortable about the appearance of the Bandersnatch. Aspects of their bodies resemble large cats like lions, especially the males, who tend to have long, hairy or downy manes, paying homage to that original illustration from the 1900s. But their humanoid or ape-like hands and avian or crocodilian bone structure make these uncanny creatures unlike any other. They are monsters who could only find a home for themselves in the deepest, darkest parts of the Feywilds. Speak to any denizen of the Feywild in regards to the frumious Bandersnatch, and a plethora of wildly conflicting and horrifying stories are likely to pour out of them. But only the one consistency about their tall tales will be of the creature's blistering speed. Some believe that they were cursed in the same way that quicklings are. Others will tell you fanciful tales like they can only move when they're not being looked at directly, making their speed a mystery. The truth of the origins of their speed is unclear, but quicklings who have had the chance to get a good look at this beast, moving at the same pace as it, and live, tend to never venture close to forests again. The Bandersnatch is an ambush hunter, preying on groups of adventurers and lost wanderers who have the misfortune to find themselves alone amongst the tum-tum trees. They move at breakneck speeds and tend to launch an attack by surprising and trampling their foes with a slash and a bite before slithering away before enemies have a chance to retaliate, only to return over and over again, whittling down their opponent's health little by little, only to pick off the weakest member of the group one by one. A Bandersnatch can seemingly hibernate, staying motionless for months at a time between meals, conserving all their energy for their missile-like attacks when prey is within reach. Given the chance to hunt a meal, they are utterly relentless. No one can outrun a Bandersnatch, and hiding from them is also nearly impossible, as these supernatural predators can seemingly fly to avoid traps, difficult terrain, and to elude hunters hoping to track their footprints. Tum-tum trees are an essential part of the Bandersnatch's life cycle. The skin of the Bandersnatch very closely mimics the tum-tum bark. The creature's feathers bear more than a passing resemblance to the leaves of this tree, and when motionless, these creatures can take on a more tree-like appearance, allowing them to effortlessly camouflage themselves in the forests of their homeland. For most creatures, camouflage is a defense mechanism to avoid predators, but for the Bandersnatch, these trees obscure their presence from their prey, allowing them to stalk their food as a tiger might use their stripes. Bandersnatches start their lives in these trees. Adults will lay a single egg among the branches of a tum-tum tree, the egg itself very closely resembling the pinecone-like seed pods of the plant. This egg will slowly sink into the main trunk of the tree, where it will grow and gestate for several years until the fledgling Bandersnatch will grow to hollow out the tree, bursting forth from its bark when it expands beyond the confines of this tree's dimensions. Bandersnatch parents do not raise their young, as their offspring emerge almost fully grown and perfectly capable of hunting for themselves. The metabolism and healing of the Bandersnatch is as swift as their pace on the ground, causing them to regenerate from almost any wound, if an attack can even be cleanly made against them. As a result, it's believed that only a vorpal sword or a winksy pistol can land the killing blow on a Bandersnatch. A mortal blow must be clean, immediate, thorough, and fundamentally magical to guarantee the death of the Bandersnatch. Why specifically these two items fit that bill are not well known to the Fae. but it is known that no one should hunt a Bandersnatch without one or both of these legendary weapons. It's said that the creation of a vorpal sword can only be performed if it is anointed in the blood of a Bandersnatch after forging, and that the blade must be forged in a fire who burns the wood of the tum-tum tree, so in many ways the vorpal blade is essentially a part of the Bandersnatch. That final tidbit is not actually my own. I was curious as to how a vorpal weapon is actually forged and found a subreddit, a stream of consciousness on Reddit I guess, where a Redditor by the name of Citizen Can Mapleleaf, it's capital Can, so maybe Citizen Canada Mapleleaf, said the following about the forging of a vorpal weapon. They said, quote, "They must be made with 5 furlongs of tugly wood to be culturally considered vorpal, like champagne. The smelt must burble as it is heated and poured slithely. The blade must be fired in a tum-tum smoke fire by a beamish smith. When anointed with the blood of a Bandersnatch, alternatively a jubjub bird is also seasonally available, the blade must be swung towards the boargroves, and if it makes a snicker-snack noise and provokes outgrabe, then it is indeed a true vorpal sword." End quote. What a wonderful bit of world building there to finish us off. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this monster. I hope you enjoyed this free homebrew creature as well. Like I say, the link is down below in my description box if this would fit into your campaign, if you want to use this monster for free. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a little thumbs up, a little like, a little favourite, perhaps subscribe as well, so that we can one day hunt our very own Bandersnatch from the tum-tum forests of obscurity. And until next time, happy monster hunting.